Hey everyone, I'm Marina from Pineapple Yarn, and I'm here to label all of this yarn today. In case you're new here, I am a hand dyer. I hand dye beautiful, bright, and bold yarn. This is my business. I have no one else working here, so some days I have a lot of work to do, and this is one of them. So I need to get started. All of this yarn is for the update that I have this Friday. So this is the largest amount of yarn that I've ever put into the shop. I'm so excited. And it's for Black Friday, which is even more fun because it's such a festive season. So hopefully I will have enough room in these shelves. I just installed all of these shelves for lots of yarn storage. It makes me super happy. So I will start labeling and then hopefully give you an after shot to show you what it all looks like up here on the shelves. I usually do a couple at a time just because it speeds up the process. And then I can also figure out if I am missing some yarn labels or yeah, if I need to print off any more. Usually I have a pretty good idea of the quantity that I dyed because there is no one else working here. But most of the time when I dye yarn, I always write it down, and I kind of have a plan of what I'm going to dye. And then I always basically dye the same amount. So one of my most popular bases or types of yarn is my sock weight yarn. So it's great to make socks from. It's a very thin yarn, so you can double it up. You can hold it together with another thin yarn or sock weight yarn and make a chunkier project. So it's a very versatile weight. So I usually, when I'm dyeing a colorway, unless it's to restock something that's sold out of a specific base, normally what I do is I dye more sock weight skeins than I do some of my other bases. And this is just for me, like when people shop Pineapple Yarn, they have generally just really loved the sock weight yarn. And that's probably pretty common with a lot of other yarn dyers. And then I also offer custom yarn dyeing in my shop. So if you are, a lot of times if you're looking for a heavier weight yarn, it's usually for a sweater or some kind of project that's larger. And in that case, your best bet is to get order, I guess, a custom order or have a custom dye job done, because all of that yarn then is dyed at the same time and it's more consistent. And then you can also get all the colors you want. So that I offer that in my shop for larger quantities. So that's one reason why I don't carry a large amount of like a DK weight in my shop, just because if someone needs a larger quantity, like 4 skeins or more for a sweater, then they can just request a custom order, which is fine. I always have that open. So that's a really fun option if you want to knit a sweater or something larger. When I first started dyeing, I would dye maybe 1 skein at a time or 2 skeins at a time. And I did that mostly because buying, well, first of all, I didn't know what anyone would want, of course, when I first started dyeing yarn, but then also because I guess undyed yarn it's kind of expensive, relative to other crafts. You're buying yarn that is, in my case with my shop, I use merino wool almost exclusively. So that's a more expensive fiber. It's a natural fiber. It's already spun. So so this is a great example. I forgot that when I was winding this colorway, I always take the loose ties and tie them up just so the skeins look really tidy. That's just what I prefer. I like all of my skeins to look really nice and tidy. And I forgot and I clipped one of the strands of yarn, not a tie. So of course I'm not going to sell something with a knot in it. So I kept that in my stash. No, I'm not really sad about that, but so I actually printed off an extra label, and that's a great reminder for me that I have one less skein of yarn. So I don't want to oversell. I want to make sure that I have an extra count, or an accurate count of what I'm putting in the shop. So I'm going to make a note of that real quick. And to take notes, I just use a notebook. I always have. And then I know where all of my notes are. Sometimes I will take notes, like a note or two on my phone, but not really. I'm definitely a pen and paper person. Okay, so I'm just writing down that I have one less skein of this colorway, which is Urban Oasis, and I have one less skein on my Lonnie sock base than I thought. There's nothing worse than overselling and selling out, and it's just so frustrating because I know for me, like I don't knit exclusively with my yarn, with pineapple yarn. I knit with all different brands, and it's so frustrating to not be able to get the yarn that you want. So I always try to be really careful with that. So the next color that I am going to start on is called Sea Glass Summer, and it is so beautiful. It's one of my, I'd say it's definitely one of my more popular colorways, and even though it's almost Thanksgiving, it's the end of November, I had to dye this color up because I think it is so pretty. So in this case, I'm going to have it on 3 different bases or yarn types. This first one I'm going to do is the yarn base. I call it Gold Nani Twist, which is, it's a 2-ply, so it is 2 strands of yarn twisted together. And this is such a fun base because it has gold stellina or gold sparkles in it. So it just adds, and even though it has the sparkles, it's still incredibly soft. So it is such a fun yarn, especially for bright colors like this. It just makes them pop. It's so pretty. And this is a fingering weight or a sock weight yarn. It's a merino wool. It's a superwash merino wool with nylon and stellina. And so basically when you see that on a label, the superwash aspect of a merino wool means that it will not shrink or felt. And not saying that you shouldn't care for your yarn or for your finished objects well. It's because it is hand dyed. You should just care for them a little extra. I guess care care for them with a little extra care, because these vibrant colors, because they're hand dyed, you just want to preserve the color for as long as possible. And then, so I do recommend hand washing your finished object and then laying it flat to dry. But I'm gonna be honest, all the socks that I knit are machine washed and dried. So I'm just putting that out there purely for ease of my life. But anything like a sweater, I don't machine wash my sweaters. They take too long. They take too long, and I don't want to mess up my knitting that took so long. So I usually hand wash those and just lay them flat to dry. So that's the superwash aspect. Now, merino is just a type of wool. It's a type of sheep, and it's very, very soft. So if you've never felt wool that's very soft, this is a great type of wool to try out because it's very soft. And then this also has nylon in it, and the nylon helps its durability. So one reason that basically all of my yarn has nylon in it, even if it's not a sock weight yarn, one reason that I do that is because it looks beautiful with vibrant colors. So for instance, this Sea Glass Summer colorway is so vibrant. It's so pretty. I should just come up close and show you because it's so pretty. So this is what it looks like. And this is the gold Selena. You can see the sparkles. Oh, it's so pretty. And you can see that it's a 2-ply. See how it's like kind of bumpy on the yarn, kind of twisted. That's because it has 2 plies or 2 strands of yarn twisted on each other. So you can see that that is just an incredibly vibrant colorway. And I have found, just with lots of experimentation, that nylon is great with neons, with bright, bold colors, which is what I dye with. And so, yeah, so I like doing that. The other thing too is I knit a lot for my children. And so they'll have hats or gloves or even sweaters, and it really helps to have the nylon in it. I really think it helps its durability, especially with a soft yarn and a soft fiber like merino wool. So it looks like I printed off the right number of labels. This is definitely what normally happens. I'm pretty consistent with the number of skeins I dye for each colorway. And, you know, sometimes something will happen, like when I go to, like I just told you, when I go to clip some of the yarn or clip the ends and I catch a strand that shouldn't be clipped. That's very sad. That doesn't happen very often, but that happens sometimes, especially with tonals. I will catch a little piece of errant dye that has got on that skein. So, you know, like a little speckle, a little dot. Sometimes, like this just happened the other day when I was dyeing. I was dyeing a complex colorway and didn't catch that the dye was not all dissolved. So I use a powder dye and then it dissolves with hot water, and it wasn't dissolved all the way. So when I put my yarn into the dye bath, it just had a little patch. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was enough where I wasn't going to put it into the shop. So sometimes that happens. And then that's actually what this little square is, some yarn that isn't first quality. I'm not going to sell it in the shop unless it's in like a mystery skein batch or something like that. It's a really great yarn. It's still usable, but usually just like a little bit of dye has got, it's like a little mistake. Something has got onto the wrong skein. So I'm going to move you over here now so you can get a close-up of what else I'm doing. Okay, so I got that side of the table done. I want to show you what I'm doing down here at the end of this table. So I really wanted to do a mini skein gradient. I love them so much. They're so much fun. So this is going to be the finished result of this gradient. I think it's so, so pretty. It's a really subtle gradient, but it goes from like a vibrant peach and pink, and then it goes through colors and it kind of comes to this beautiful like dusky mauve and purple, and I just think it's so pretty. And then they all have speckles throughout. So what I do is with my gradients, I'm gonna pop you up here for a minute. You can see me. What I do with my gradients is I dye them so they're wraparound gradients. So for instance, you know, if this is skeins 1 through 6, you can knit them in like a cowl or knit something where skein 1 and skein 6 are going to meet, because it will still make a continuous gradient. And I love that. I love doing that. So the other way that you can use this is, let's say you are knitting a shawl, knitting a hat, like whatever you're knitting or crocheting. You don't have to start at skein 1. You're not going to ruin the gradient. You can start, let's say you want to start on skein 4. You could do that and then just put skeins 1 through 3 like that, and it would still all flow really well. So what I do is I like to play around, see how it's going to look in the package, and then package it that way. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I package these differently. I don't wrap them in skein bands. Because it is a gradient, I like for it to look in the package I like for it to look like a gradient in the package, if that makes sense. And obviously, if it was wrapped in a skein band, then you wouldn't know what skeins were 1 through 6. So I am going to start packaging these. They're really crinkly. So I'm going to turn my mic off, and then I'm probably going to label all the rest of these, maybe do a little fast motion because I'm sure this video is so long anyway. And then you can still get the satisfaction of watching me label everything.